You are listening to KC Sports Network, the #1 podcast network for today's Kansas City sports fans. With former players from your favorite teams, informed perspectives, and former insiders, this is the place for you. KC Sports Network is proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
Hello and welcome into KCSNU Kickoff, your home for college football on KCSNU, which is your home for college athletics at KCSN. I'm joined, as I am every week, by Matt Lane. Matty, how you doing? Took last week off, had a big weekend in Kansas City. Matty was in Kansas City, didn't get a show done. There were a lot of games going on. But Matty, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm glad to be back. Tucker and I, we kicked around the idea of maybe recording early last week, maybe trying to record like live while we were having our KCSN golf tournament. And we get there at 7 a.m. It's cold. Tucker has on like 13 different outfits that he's wearing all on top of each other, so he can just shed them as the day goes. And neither one of us were ready to record, so we had to miss last week. But we're excited to be back. Buddy, college football is kicking off now. We are on the full swing of things right now, and I could not be more pumped for the rest of the season.
Well, is it week 8 now? Is it week 8 in college football season? Week 9?
I think it's 8 because we don't count week 0. It just doesn't matter. It just doesn't exist.
Nebraska would like to think it doesn't exist either. Maybe Scott Frost still have a job.
They just want the whole season out. They just want Trey Palmer's records, and everything else is just eradicated.
Right. That's probably a good call. An unnecessary shot at Nebraska to start the podcast, but nevertheless, it wouldn't be a KCSNU update or KCSNU kickoff if there wasn't a shot at Nebraska. So, Matty, let's get into it. Let's get into your one big thing from this last week.
For me, I mean, I guess since we missed last week, I just want to kind of touch on a couple of the games that I think mattered a lot last week. Obviously, Tennessee beating Alabama, big, huge. That puts another team right now like squarely in the playoff race. Tennessee will still have to play Georgia. If they beat them, they might see Alabama again. Even if they lose, though, to Georgia, and Georgia goes on to win the SEC championship, if that's their only loss, they're going to have a pretty good case to make the college football playoff if they just take care of business. That's a good football team. And they didn't even have their best offensive player. Cedric Tillman wasn't even playing in the game, and they put up 50 points versus Alabama. So that's a team to keep your eyes on. What else happened? Oh, TCU, we're going to talk about them more. But, hey, TCU, they survive a big game versus Oklahoma State. They come back in the fourth quarter. They're still rolling in the Big 12. Like, we've had a lot of good college football. And my final one here, another team we're going to talk about. Texas might be back, Tuck. Texas really might be back. They're trending the right way, and then they go up to fight the fighting Matt Campbells, who, when they are double-digit dogs, he was 9-0. It's against the spread, I understand, but he is continuously coming away with upsets in these kind of situations. And Iowa State gave Texas a game. They gave them a game, and Texas found a way to win. This is a game that in the past Texas 100% loses. So to be riding high off that Oklahoma blowout and then to go up there to Ames and come away with a victory, I think that bodes well for that program trying to stay their back. So, like, those are the 3, I think, of the biggest games that caught my eye last week.
I think that makes sense. Those were all 3 big games. Mizzou, local team, had a bye week. Kansas was the only local team in action, so that means Kansas State obviously had a bye week as well. Kansas had a hard-fought game against Oklahoma. They hung in there with the backup quarterback, Jason Bean. Dealing with some injuries. We got previews of both these Kansas State and Kansas games and recaps of both of those games. If you want to go check those out, click the things up here, up in the other corner, up in that corner over there. Go click them up there. We got a preview or recaps, previews, whatever I decide to put up there. It's going to be up there. So, yeah, I was just looking at I was looking at the Big 12 preseason poll because I was curious where TCU was picked, because if I remember right, TCU was not picked very high in the Big 12 preseason poll. They were picked 7th. Yes.
Oh, look at that guess, pulling it out of nowhere.
Behind Iowa State, Kansas State, Texas. Oklahoma State was 3, Oklahoma 2. That means number 1, the Baylor Bears were picked to win the Big 12.
And the crazy part, this TCU team is the same roster that it was last year. Nobody's new. They didn't come. They don't have this high-level freshman that came in. They didn't load up a bunch of transfers. It's quite literally the same team minus even a couple guys. And then all of a sudden they've kind of flipped it around. It's almost like Gary Patterson's time in Fort Worth had run its course for a couple seasons because like all of a sudden they're playing good. I also, before you get to your one big thing, we got to talk about it. Our Huskies back on the W column. They beat Arizona in a very high scoring, fun game. We got the Husky shirt in. It kind of looks blue, but it is purple. We're still riding with the Huskies. Maybe a little bit of an errant pick to root for this year. This year we're just rooting for fun. We don't have playoff hopes like we did last year with the Bearcats, but they got back in the win column and they got a pretty fun match late the rest of the year. Actually, like every game for them is going to be kind of fun.
Yeah. Anytime the Huskies play, you better bet the over. That's basically what it comes down to. My one big thing, I'm going to go over our picks because last week we didn't have a show to go over them. Maddie, you fought back to a 500 week last week, 3-3-1. We got the push with Kansas State losing by a point to Iowa State. That was a push for both of us. Obviously, whatever side you picked, it was going to be a push. But that was a push. Now, Maddie, your record moved to 14-16-2, making that way back to 500.
Lurking.
You are indeed. I went 4-2-1, the same thing I did as the week before. Actually, fun fact. My record now moves to 23-13-2. Listen, having one good week will do that for you. I'm just riding the high still off of one good week. I've just been hovering around 500. But yeah, Tux Locks coming soon. I'm sure by the time that this podcast is out, this video is out. You already know Tux Locks, and there's going to be 2 games that we talk about today that are Tux Locks. Fun fact, but we won't know until we get there. So, Maddie, let's start with the local games. Probably the biggest game, I think, on the slate of local games. Well, it is. It's not a probably. Vanderbilt, Missouri could be a tough one. Give them a run for their money. Kansas State travels. Yeah, the primetime 4:00 Eastern. Kansas State, they get a was it 6:30? I believe this game is actually at 7, Maddie. I think it got bumped to 7 because it was Fox Sports 1. It was going to be on Fox. Got bumped to Fox Sports 1 because of the baseball game. The Padres Phillies.
Whoa, move that game if anything.
Right? That's what I'm saying. You got to move that baseball game. But I think that's what happened, kind of a scheduling thing, just move it a little bit. So it's a 7 p.m. local time kickoff as Kansas State travels to Fort Worth. Yeah, it's kind of a late game for especially a central time zone game. I think it's a little later, but
I don't hate it. It gives you an hour to watch some other primetime games before it kicks off. Stagger them a little bit. It works out actually pretty well, I think, for everybody else. But yeah, that is interesting. Sorry to cut you off.
No, it's okay. Number 8 TCU hosting number 17 Kansas State. Top 25 matchup, Maddie. What are your first impressions?
Whew, this is like the battle for the Big 12, right? Like these two teams right here, I think are the only undefeated teams left in the Big 12. Not that you have to lock it up kind of after this, that these guys are going to the championship game or anything like that, but this is the game. Like this is kind of the last two teams. Whoever gets this kind of writes their own destiny. They have their own ticket. And I think more importantly than that, right? Loser of this game can't wear purple anymore. So like that matters, right? Like the loser has to go home and pick a different primary color. So that'll be fun. We didn't get to see a ton of TCU. Didn't get to see any K-State. We didn't get to watch a ton of TCU last week, but they still are coming off that high of the Kansas game. Like, what do you think about the old Horned Frogs and what K-State looks like going up against them?
Yeah, I've been impressed with TCU. It seems like old Max Duggan down there has kind of figured it out a little bit. He talked about transferring, and then he said, "No, I'm just going to stick with it. I'm going to stay here." Who was the guy that they had starting ahead of him, and he ended up getting hurt against, what was it, BYU or something like that? He got hurt early in the season, and they brought Max Duggan in, and I think he just runs an offense a little bit better. Probably it makes sense too because he's been there. So the TCU just looked a whole lot better once he became the quarterback, I think. And I think, Maddie, you and I have had that conversation off air about like, oh, TCU looked a lot different once he came in and took over, and probably for good reason. I kind of liked it. I think they're a fun team. They're one of those teams where, like, as we mentioned at the top of the show, picked 7th in the Big 12 to begin it. No one really thought anything of this TCU team. They bring in, what is it, Sonny Dykes? Is that who they brought in as their head coach? Who was at SMU, correct?
Correct.
All of that off the dome. No preview for
still lives there because TCU is like right down the road from SMU, so he didn't even have to change houses. He just changed jobs.
That is true. That's kind of sick. But he
Then he
seems
went
to
and beat
be.
them.
Go ahead. Oh yeah, he did beat them.
He went and beat them. It's a fun
Yes.
story arc.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that because they battle for the golden skillet, right? Is that what it is?
Something funny like that. I think so. I think that might be it.
I this is gonna bring up my random TCU knowledge that I seemingly have. I seem to tell you something new about TCU every single week for some reason.
And I love it.
Um,
No, we gotta tell the people the TCU as a university is on our radar. Okay, they
they
have
are.
a lot of traditions, a lot of things I'm just not so sure about. They're on our radar. And the good football team, but the university as a whole is on the radar.
It started with the chant. Not really sure what goes on there with the scoopity doop zuma.
It's a lot of chanting.
A lot of words, a lot of different phrases, and then it starts with them wearing red out of nowhere, just because it has something to do with like shooting blood out of the eyes of the horned frog or something like that. So, like, yeah, we need to wear red on occasion and paint our goal line red. Odd, but fine. Now they play for the Golden Skillet with SMU. I don't know why I know this many, but they play for a
Okay.
Golden Skillet because the rumor was when these two teams played that SMU fans would fry frog legs before the games in skillets. So that's what they fought for, was a golden skillet in the rivalry game. But man, learn something new every day about TCU on KCSNU
Well, and,
kickoff.
like, you can't forget the hand signal. Like, they have an aggressive
It is very
hand
aggressive.
signal. So, like, I don't TCU, we're watching you guys.
We have our eyes on you. Maddie, who do you have your eyes on in this game prospect wise?
That transition was great. So I
Thank
did
you.
want to say, yeah, Max Duggan taking over the offense was fantastic. I think it's his athleticism. He
Mm.
took over for Chandler Morris, an OU transfer.
That's right.
I think it's just the athleticism of Duggan to be able to use his legs in this offense when things break down or to actually weaponize them. But we were talking about these last 2 weeks when they have taken a step up in competition versus Kansas and Oklahoma State. What has their offense done? They've gone through Quentin Johnston. And like I just talked about him for Kansas, but I think if you've watched them the last 2 weeks, you can't look at TCU and not realize that they're like, hey, we have the best player on the field. He plays wide receiver for us. Let's just throw him the ball a billion times. And it's working. So I think it's kind of going to be up to K-State to stop Quentin Johnston. They're going to throw it short. They're going to throw it long. They'll throw it all over the place. So for K-State, we've talked about Julius Brents before. I think he has the size and athleticism to match up pretty well. But because K-State does play so much zone, what's it going to look like when Echo Boydo is the cornerback over Quentin Johnston? He's not quite the same level of athlete. He's not the same size. He's probably not as highly thought of a draft prospect. So is that a matchup that TCU is going to hunt down? And how does K-State kind of balance that out? Because you don't want to do what Kansas did or what Oklahoma State did and essentially let one guy beat you. K-State probably isn't competing to score 40 or 50 versus TCU. That's just not their normal offensive game plan. So if Quentin Johnston has another 200 yards and a touchdown or two, that's a lot of ball movement. That's a lot of points for this TCU team that K-State cannot allow.
Absolutely. Gonna be a lower scoring game, I anticipate. Curious to see how the K-State guys look off of a week of rest. Probably a week of much needed rest when it comes there. All right, Maddie. Kansas State, TCU, both undefeated in the Big 12, 1-2 right now sitting in the Big 12. Loser of this game could still find their way to Arlington. It's not an impossible thing.
Just not in purple.
Just not in purple. Here we go. Kansas State is favored by 3.5 points on the road. TCU 4-1-1 against the spread. Kansas State, same record, 4-1-1 against the spread so far this year. What are you thinking about this pick, Maddie?
Home, dog, undefeated, putting the horns up, baby. We're getting the horny toad out. Yeah, this university's nerve-wracking, but we're going to ride with them right now. Not just because I'm scared of whatever they got going on down there in Fort Worth, but because I think they're a better team. You're going to give them points. I think even if K-State wins, I think getting more than a field goal for the home team is absolutely worth taking here.
Yep, I agree. There's a scenario where I do see this game not being close really on either side of it, but I do think it is a close game. A fun stat here from our friends at DraftKings. Kansas State has covered the spread in each of its last 4 games against TCU. Let's be honest, though, those last 4 games against TCU have been against Gary Patterson. Coach TCU teams have not been the best. Another fun one here if you are an over or under better. Each of Kansas State's last 7 games against top 10 AP ranked teams have gone over the total points line. That over-under set at 54.5. Average points per game in Amon G. Carter Stadium in Fort Worth, Texas, 79.3. They've hit the over in 3 of their games this season that TCU has played at home. Got to hammer the over. I think I'm going to take the Horned Frogs as well. The 3.5 at home is just too good. I think TCU's pretty darn good too. I could see this game going K-State's way, right? But I just don't think that you can lay more than a field goal on the road and feel comfortable about that pick.
Well, I think the thing is, and we're spending a lot of time here, so we'll have to make up time somewhere else here. But the thing with TCU is if they jump out to an early lead, it's going to be hard for K-State to catch back up, right? If things just start to flow TCU's way, TCU's already been down by double-digit scores just last week and came back. And I know K-State's a different animal than Oklahoma State, and that offense really grinds on you, but TCU can score points in bunches, right? So, like, if they fall behind, getting a backdoor cover of 3.5 is quite possible, or just coming back and winning the game outright. I just feel more comfortable with ways that TCU covers the 3.5 than K-State does.
Absolutely. And Maddie, this is probably a spot where we can make up a little bit of time because Missouri hosts Vanderbilt for homecoming. I'll be in attendance. I'm going to the game. I'm excited. First time back in Columbia since probably 2014, since the good old days of Missouri football. No joke. Hopefully to see a win. This game is at 3 Central Time, 4 Eastern. In Columbia. This will be on the SEC network. Probably good that they put that on the SEC network because this is not going to be a good football game for really either side.
So if you like college football and everything about it, if you just like the entirety of college football, you will want to watch this game because there is going to be a lot of poor football played between 2 really bad football teams. And that is part of college football, right? So this game could be fun in that regard. I don't think it's going to be a bad, you're not going to get a blowout to where it's not entertaining. Both these teams will do everything they can to make sure the other team wins. It's just what's going to happen. Yeah. The color schemes are very similar. So that's going to be cool. That's going to be really fun looking out there and seeing a whole lot of black, gold, and white on every single player. So, no, this is a game. I always want to ask you, even without breaking down the game, you guys you've already broken down this game a little bit. We don't need to go too far into that. As Tucker showed you, point to the, click the link somewhere around here. And then you can go find that. I just want to ask you, if Vandy wins this game, how down bad are Mizzou fans going to be if Vanderbilt comes in and wins their first SEC game in how long now?
In absolute millenniums.
It's James Franklin, probably.
Yeah. I think that this is the most must-win game of Eli Drinkwitz's tenure as the Missouri Tigers head coach. If they lose this game, it sets the program back a few years, just because the optics of losing to Vanderbilt are not good for recruiting, not good for morale. It's not good for anything. You can be a casual college football fan and know that Vanderbilt's not good. Even though they're probably better than they have been in years past, it still doesn't matter if they do lose to Vanderbilt. People will be like, oh, you lost to Vanderbilt. That team stinks. And this is really a battle for who's going to be 13th place in the SEC. Missouri already lost the game for 12th place, and that was against Auburn. So they're battling for second to last in the SEC this year against Vandy. And if they lose this game, it's not going to be good. I don't think it bodes very well for Eli, even though I've been pumping the patience train on everybody with Eli. This is the biggest, most must-win game, I think, is the best way to put it.
No, I think that's fair. I absolutely think that's fair. So I'm interested to see how it goes. For my Missouri friends and fans out there, I hope that they do go and get this win. But I think the Vanderbilt program is slowly turning it around. They're never going to be a great football program, but I do think they're starting to figure some stuff out. I think you've seen that a little bit this year. So they are no longer the complete doormat that they were. And it would be really fun for the college football if they had somebody else competing for that final rung with them in the SEC rather than it just automatically being them. I mean, I guess we're going to talk about this real quick. Players to watch. If Missouri wants to win this game, right, there's one person you have to stop for Vanderbilt. It's Will Sheppard, the wide receiver. He's been absolutely phenomenal for them. I think he's up to 8 touchdowns on the year. Big guy, good receiver. He was productive last year, even when the offense was worse. He's like the one guy that can probably do a little bit of damage to SEC level athletes and opponents. So, Enos Rakestraw, a Missouri cornerback that I was upset with because they played him a lot last year when I just wanted them to play my Tulsa transfers, my Tulsa guys coming in who I thought were better. Rakestraw got a lot of play and sometimes didn't always look good, especially early on last year. But I think he improved as the year went on. He's been playing a little bit better this year. There's another big test for him. It's not that Sheppard is, the surefire early round draft pick, but he's a guy that has a good chance to play in the NFL. I think Rakestraw does too. So like that kind of singular matchup right there could be the difference between Vandy scoring 6 points in this whole game or maybe scoring 14, 17, something like that.
Yeah, I think so too. Let's get into the pick here. Missouri favored by 14 points. Mizzou's 4-2 against the spread. Vandy 2-5 against the spread. Here's a fun fact before you make your pick, Maddie. Of course, you have our friends at DraftKings. Vanderbilt has covered the spread in 8 of its last 9 road games against non-AP ranked teams.
Listen, that's a lot of points, man. That's a whole lot of points. I think that Missouri is a better team. I think we saw it kind of a little bit against Georgia. They can be more physical when they need to be. They can kind of lean on this physicality, and they do have more SEC level athletes than the Vanderbilt's going to have. I think they're starting to realize that a little bit. So I think that they can play at that level. I can play at a level that Vanderbilt cannot match. I do think Missouri wins this game. Nothing from this Missouri offense makes me think they can win any game by 14 points. I'm taking the Commodores. Fly, Commodores, fly. Give me the points in this one.
That's the thing that holds me up is the offense, and we have not seen a productive offense in ever. Louisiana Tech wasn't even really that productive of an offensive day. I think they scored 38 points against the Bulldogs, and they looked okay offensively, but they haven't looked that good since. That's probably the best they've looked all year, I would say, offensively, which is not a good thing. My first gut reaction is, Vandy 14, but there is always that bit to me where like maybe the defense scores for Mizzou a little bit, and maybe that's what tips the scales. Maybe the defense coming up with some turnovers, giving the offense some opportune field position, some good opportunities to put some points on the board. But Maddie, I think you're right. I think I'm going to go the 14 with Vandy. That's a lot of points and with a team that I'm not very confident in the offense. Okay, so let's move on to the final local game, Kansas versus Baylor. If you want an in-depth breakdown, go click up there in the top right-hand corner. Sorry, you will find a breakdown from Kent and Scott on the booth review. So, Maddie, give me your quick first impressions of this Kansas versus Baylor in Waco at 11 a.m.
Well, I believe Blake Shapen is playing quarterback for Baylor. It sounds like he will be back. He left that last Thursday game against West Virginia with a head injury. It sounds like he'll be back, and that matters because the Baylor offense isn't great, right? They're not a great offense, but when he's back there, he makes some Sunday level throws. He makes some stuff happen. So getting him really matters for Baylor. That defense is still physical. They're still strong. Dave Aranda is always going to have that defense playing well. Do not let the game against West Virginia fool you into thinking that this defense is somehow terrible. That said, Kansas does a great job of stressing good defense. I don't know if Aranda has seen this level of just misdirection and motion so far this year. Not that he hasn't before. I love him as a defensive coordinator. He might be one of my favorite head coaches in all of college football right now. But what Kansas has been doing offensively is so fun. And I still think Jalen Daniels is more talented than Jason Bean. But what Bean does in this offense, his ability to make some of these throws downfield and place the ball where he does is really good in this offense. Like, I understand why they started him last year. So, I kind of like this as a fun quarterback battle and two teams that I think are more evenly matched than the hot start of Kansas made people believe, or that Baylor winning the Big 12 last year made people believe, or the scores from the last couple of weeks. I think these two teams are very similarly matched talent-wise and just where they're playing at right now. So this should be a fun one.
I think so too. I think it'll be a good game. There's a reason that Jason Bean pushed Jalen Daniels all the way to the end before they named him the starter. even up in this summer. It was a close competition to who was going to be the quarterback of that football team. Obviously, you can't blame the decision that they made to go with Daniels. I mean, that dude's a stud. Want to see him back as soon as possible. Kansas is dealing with a lot of injuries. And Scott and Kent talk about that on their show. They have was Jacoby Dean, or he does not play for Kansas. He played for Georgia.
Kobe Bryant.
Yes.
I believe we were Jacoby Bryant. Kobe Bryant. I don't know how injured he is, but I do believe he's not playing, and that matters because he's really good. I don't know what other injuries they have besides him and Jalen Daniels.
Yeah, well, those are two big ones
there.
They do have others. I mean, I think they had a running back get hurt in the Iowa State TCU game. I can't remember which one it was, but they've got a lot of running backs there. It's going to be a really interesting game, I think. Maddie, who are some prospects that you're watching for in this game?
I talk about it every time we do these. Kansas has a lot of underclassmen. I've talked a lot about their defensive ends so far, and I still like them. But I think we're going to focus on the Baylor side right now. Siaki Ika, talked about him early in the year, and he had a decent game versus BYU. He's coming back up. I love what Kansas does offensively. I love all the outside zone stuff. I love the motion. I love the throwbacks and the where's the ball, hidden tricks and stuff. You want to know a way you blow that up? If Siaki Ika playing nose tackles 5 yards deep in the backfield every single play, whether he's making a tackle or not, just being there, his presence matters. If he can come out and dominate this game from that nose tackle spot like he has done many in the past, that's going to go a long way. So it's going to be up to Mike Nowitzki. I believe he is a senior. He might be a redshirt senior for Kansas here. Been around a while. He's probably playing to get his name, in the UDFA or late day 3 consideration. He's a little bit undersized, so I don't love the matchup here against somebody like Ika, but he's going to have to hold his best. He's going to have his best game of the year, if Kansas wants to win this one, because there will be times where he is going to be matched up one-on-one with that monster of a guy across from him, and he's got to hold his own.
Looking at the line here, Baylor favored by 9 points at home. KU 6-0-1 against the spread this year. Baylor 3-3. Fun fact: before we get into the pick, I got to give you all the information before we get there. Baylor has covered the spread in each of its last 10 games against the Kansas football Jayhawks. Now that is a different stat because this is not the same Kansas team as the last 10 years. But an interesting stat nevertheless. Maddie, what do you got?
I don't think that Baylor has beat any teams besides Albany and Texas State by 9.5. If I'm looking through them, they've had a lot of losses. The only other win they actually have is Iowa State, which they would not have covered 9.5. They have lost against Oklahoma State, West Virginia, BYU. Where is this 9.5 for Baylor coming from? What is Kansas? Easy. This might be the easiest. This might be the easiest bet I think one can make. Nothing that we've seen from Bean or Kansas makes me think they're just going to fold and not show up. I would probably even consider taking them in a straight pick 'em versus Baylor from what we've seen. I love Dave Aranda and what he's done there, but Kansas has played better throughout this entire season, and now you're giving them 9.5. Give me the Jayhawks.
9.5 is too many points for a Big 12 game, and that's just basically what it comes down to. This is a 3.5 point game. I think we'd have a different conversation, but every single game in the Big 12 is going to be incredibly close, just because I think all of these teams are very evenly matched when it comes to top to bottom in the conference. It's anyone's conference right now. I couldn't tell you. I think when we look ahead to Arlington here in a few weeks, I'm not going to be able to say, oh, yeah, I knew that team was going to be in the Big 12 championship. I couldn't tell you. I think looking at it right now, Maddie, we had a conversation about earlier in one of our episodes about like who would you take? I think it was like Oklahoma, Texas, Oklahoma State, or the field. And I think I took those 3 in the to win the Big 12. Still looking pretty good, but there are some good teams in
Oklahoma.
That field. Not Oklahoma. They're gone. They're done. So it's basically either Oklahoma State or Texas. And when it comes down to it. Now, Maddie, let me flip this question to you. Oklahoma State, TCU, Texas, or the field?
Oh, it's one of those 3. I think it's one of those 3. K-State, I think K-State's your only field option that you didn't mention there, right? I think they're the only field option. And so when we've got far enough into it now that the field I can limit down that far, I will gladly take these other 3 teams. For me, I think it's going to be TCU or Texas right now. I think Texas is probably playing the best football, and I think TCU has just got such a head start right now without having a loss. And I think their schedule gets a little bit better after this week. Like, this is a tough game versus K-State, but I think they've kind of come out of a little bit of a harder stretch after this. So I think it's going to be TCU or Texas. But if I get to put Oklahoma State in there and then just compare that to K-State, yeah, I would take one of those three.
Yep. I agree with you. I'm also going to agree with you on the KU 9.5. I don't know if I officially gave that pick. It's a lot of points. A lot of points, even though Baylor has covered the spread in each of its last 10 games against Kansas. Not the same Kansas football team. All right, let's move on to the next matchup. This is a big ACC matchup going on at 11 a.m. as well. Number 14, Syracuse travel to Death Valley to take on the Clemson Tigers, the ABC matchup. Where is College Game Day? I just thought about that. Where is it at?
Oregon. They are out in Eugene. We're about to get there, so
we will. Okay, never mind. I didn't say that. Syracuse, Clemson, number 14, number 5. What are your thoughts, Maddie?
This is your Qs. This is your team. Yes. Like, this is your Washington Huskies. You picked a little bit better of a choice than I did. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, my team's more exciting, but you picked the better football team here. And that's just kind of it. Syracuse is this very weird ACC team that you're going to see every now and then where they're going to make the game. They're the Pittsburgh Panthers of every other year, but it's Syracuse this year. They make every game ugly. They play really good defense. They have a quality run game with a really good running back in Sean Tucker that essentially puts the majority of the offense on their back. Garrett Schrader does a pretty good job at quarterback, managing the game and making enough plays, but it's ugly. And that's how they want to win. And when you have a defense that's as good as the Syracuse defense, again, it's going to look really, really good. Across them, I think Clemson's kind of peaking at the right time. I think we're getting really close to Petty Dabo, getting these guys fired up week in and week out because they're not climbing the rankings. Everyone's dunking on DJU. Everyone's ripping apart their team, and all of a sudden now their quarterback room's getting healthy. The defensive line's getting healthy. Dabo's getting upset that they're not getting a more notoriety in the ranking polls. I don't know. I think we're getting close to real Petty, which is real good Dabo, who still refuses to play college football the way everybody else does with NIL deals and transfers and hiring from outside of the Clemson family. And somehow it's working as good as ever.
What a weirdo. Maybe some of my angst in this pick comes from my angst towards Clemson. I used to actually really like Clemson. Like, when we're talking about, like, I'm trying to think who the quarterback was, even before Deshaun Watson there.
Taj Boyd?
Yes, Taj Boyd. I like the Taj Boyd Clemson teams.
Yeah.
That's who I was a fan of when I was watching. I was like, man, they got purple and orange. That's a cool color combination. They should wear their purple helmets more often. That's what they should do. They need to wear the purple tops a little bit more. They need to incorporate the purple. Is what this podcast is. They need to fight TCU, beat TCU, then they can use purple. Is what has to happen. But no, Syracuse, you mentioned it. The team that I have adopted, partially because Syracuse is 5-1 against the spread, and every time I bet Syracuse, they win. And Sean Tucker, dog. He is very good in the receiving game, in the run game. He always tweets out that he's pleased or not pleased with his performance based on whether the game goes, and he will tweet out his stat lines as well. One of the greatest things in college football is Sean Tucker's Twitter. If you don't know, you should go look up Sean Tucker on Twitter. Incredible. I don't want to give away my pick too soon, Maddie, so I need you to talk about players to watch because I'm excited for my pick.
Well, fair. I want to say this. This is the third game so far where we are having like a primary color off, and there's another one coming up later in the schedule. There's a lot of primary color offs going on this right now. A lot of teams got to change their brand after this week. Okay, players to watch. I mean, like, there's a lot of guys you can watch this game. I think one of the ways it's going to come down to is this: can Syracuse match the physicality of Clemson? I think their defense can't. Their defense, I think, will be physical enough. I don't know if they'll have enough overall talent, but they can be physical enough. But what about the other side? Where is Syracuse going to get points? Where is Sean Tucker going to be able to run the ball versus this Clemson team? I think one of the big matchups is going to be Matthew Bergeron, left tackle for Syracuse. He was good year last year, exceptional start to this year. He's been playing really well at left tackle. But Miles Murphy for Clemson, I was a little hesitant about him coming in this year. Thought he played a little similar to Cleveland Farrell in that he's kind of upright. He's a little bit thicker, maybe not the bendiest guy, and everything he does is kind of in a straight line. And we know how that worked for Farrell going forward. But Murphy's starting to put it a lot together. The hands are working. He looks a little bit more fluid. And then Xavier Thomas is now getting healthy and kind of playing, at least in brief periods, like he was the 5-star recruit as a freshman. The Syracuse defensive line is dominant. They're really good. Bergeron's going to have his hands full with these guys. Like, I think that's kind of a big one there is, can Bergeron and that Q's offensive line get any space to get the run game going and not just go 3 and out after 3 and out, and until DJU and the athleticism Clemson has kind of starts to just roll downhill on them.
Clemson favored by 14 points in this game. Two tutties against a team that is ranked 9 spots worse than them. Top 15 matchup, and you're going to say number one team is 14 points better. Sorry, I might have tipped my pick right there. Syracuse 5-1 against the spread, as I mentioned. Clemson 4-3 against the spread this season. Maddie, what is your pick?
Boy, this one has me torn. It really does. 14's a lot. I think Syracuse doesn't allow a lot of points. They're undefeated for a reason. They do kind of slow the game down with the way that they play offense. But Clemson's been terrible versus the spread. They haven't looked good. Nothing's been clean about what they're doing. I think they're getting better, but nothing's been clean. But like I said, I think they're getting healthy at the right time. I think you're getting petty Dabo. And when what Dabo does good, he's not a good X's and O's, guys. I don't think he runs an offense. I don't think he runs a defense. He motivates guys and he gets them to play. And if Dabo feels slighted and he's able to get that down to the players on that team, there's nothing scarier than a motivated Clemson team with the talent that he pulls in there and how hard he gets them to play. I'm going to lay the points and take the Tigers at home. I didn't anticipate doing this, but I think the way this team is going, they're gearing themselves up for actually a pretty good playoff push. I think this game kind of sparks it. I think Dabo's feeling the pressure of another undefeated team in the ACC and not getting the respect he thinks they want or deserve.
Incredibly fair. I'm taking the 14 points. This is
Smart
a Tux
move.
lock. Tux lock, Syracuse, 14 points. I don't see how they can lose by 14. A little nugget, Maddie. I forgot to drop this one on you before your pick.
Oh.
It's probably my fault. It is my fault. Syracuse has covered the spread in each of its last 7 games in October. From our friends at DraftKings Sportsbook, they are an October team.
And the leaves.
Another interesting fact here. Over-under set at 49.5 points. Average points per game at Old Death Valley has been 55 this year. Kind of high. Over-under record 2-1. But 5 of the last 6 games between Syracuse and Clemson have gone under this 49.5 total points line. So it will be a defensive struggle, I think we will see here. I don't think it'll be very high scoring. And I think Syracuse can... Do I think Syracuse can win? Probably. That's probably the Syracuse bias in me. Do I think they're going to lose by 14 points? No. I don't think that that's going to happen. I like the orange. Give me the orange and the points, 14. And then that's a lock. So you heard it here first, folks. That is a Tux lock. And this next game, also a Tux locks game, UCLA versus Oregon. Number 9 UCLA, number 10 Oregon. UCLA travels up to Eugene. It's a Fox game. Fox 3:30, 2:30 Central. It's a good Pac-12 matchup on this one.
This is a Chip Kelly revenge game.
Yeah.
Chip Kelly coming home to roost. Here comes Chip and these undefeated Bruins coming into Eugene for a good old-fashioned Pac-12 slobber knocker. I mean, Oregon gets muscled around by Georgia, gets pushed around, and it looks really bad. But in terms of Pac-12 teams outside of last year against Utah, Oregon's kind of always been the bully in the conference. They've always bullied Washington, bullied USC when USC was down, and they did, just had speed, but no brawn. That was kind of Oregon's MO. They're getting back to that. Like, they're still one of the more physical teams in the Pac-12. I mean, Utah thinks differently, obviously, but they're still one of the more physical teams. But then here comes old Chip Kelly's Bruins, and somehow this Chip Kelly-led team is about as physical as it gets. They pushed around Utah. They made Utah look like the small team that was having to gimmick their way up and down the field. And that game wasn't close. Sans a random pick 6 to end the game, like towards the end of the game, thrown by UCLA up multiple scores. Like, that was UCLA looks good. They look physical, and they have the Chip Kelly's offense isn't innovative anymore, but there's still staples of it that work. And this team has a lot of veterans that have been around that system for a while, mainly at quarterback, to kind of have it rolling. I feel really good about UCLA in this one, but Oregon's been playing better since that Georgia loss. They've kind of been cleaning everyone's clock. So I think this is a good game between, I think, the two best teams in the Pac-12. I'll say I think both these teams are better than USC. So I think this kind of goes a long way towards the end of this. And you could honestly see these two teams play each other again for the Pac-12 championship since they got rid of divisions.
Good move, by the way.
Great.
DTR, stud. He's a dog. I really like what UCLA has on offense. It's wild. If you would have told me that heading into this year, if you would have told me that this was Chip Kelly's 5th year at UCLA, I'd have been like, no, it's not. You're not right. That seemed wild to me that he's been there for that long. And I think there was like the other week before like UCLA got onto my map, I was like, I wonder what Chip Kelly's doing now. Just thinking about Chip Kelly, but he's too busy running the best Pac-12 team in the country is what he's doing. I really like UCLA. I like the way they play. It was really that a game against Washington when I watched them and I was like, oh, this team's good. Like this team's pretty good. So I'm a very big UCLA. I don't want to say homer, but like I watched that game and I was like, yeah, dude, they're good. And then who'd they play after Washington? They played
Utah. I was straight up. It's Washington, Utah, Oregon. All 3 in a row. They had a bye week last week, but all 3 in a row. And then they have, the rest of the Pac-12 before USC the second to last week.
Well, we did talk about that UCLA Utah game, I believe, on the show. If we didn't talk about it, we talked about it off air at least. I was like, I think UCLA kind of bullies them, and they did. And I think that was your reservation. Was like, okay, Utah's pretty physical. UCLA doesn't seem very physical, and UCLA has flipped that script. So I'm excited to see how this game goes. College game day is on this game, as we found out earlier. So, Maddie, give me some players to watch for in this game when I'm watching UCLA take them on the Ducks.
And this was it, right? This was my hesitation about UCLA when that Utah game, because I picked Utah bullies teams, and UCLA notoriously can get some offense going, but they kind of get bullied. They flipped that script. They bullied Utah. They bullied Washington. They bullied Utah. Now they're going up against Oregon, a team that has been bullied once already this year. I'm going to start right up the front on the defensive line. I mean, UCLA has a lot of defenders that are pretty good, right? Like I think for the Utah game, we are talking about a Latu for them, but I'm going to go to the Murphy twins, transfers from North Texas. There's 2 of them. They were 11 and 12. They're identical twins. They look very similar. It's a lot of fun to watch. So Gabriel Murphy's good. I think Grayson Murphy's even better. He's number 12. I really like what he looks like out there. He's got a thicker lower half than his brother, and he uses it really well. He's got long arms. He does everything out of his long arm move. He's a good pass rusher, not much of a run defender, but they line up these 2 Murphy twins and Latu and their defensive tackles. They stand them up. They put them left, right, down on the hand in the dirt. They line them up everywhere and just let these guys play like bulls in a china shop. And that's what it looks like out there. So across from them for Oregon, you're going to have Malai Sala Amuvai Ulu. It's a guy that has a lot of freaking letters on the back of his jersey playing right tackle. And he's good. He's a big guy, but moves pretty well. So he's playing right tackle for them. I believe it's TJ Bass has kicked out from guard to left tackle last year and this year because of injuries. Those are 2 tackles they're going to have the hands for with the Murphy twins, with Latu. Oregon doesn't have to do everything behind Bo Nix's arm, but Bo Nix, if he gets pressured, turns into a pumpkin, right? And so they think that's where this game's won or lost. And I like UCLA's physicality. I like their athletes there on the defensive line. So maybe I'm hinting at what my pick's going to be for this game, but I think this matchup favors UCLA despite Oregon generally having a good offensive line.
You probably wouldn't be able to tell this by the way we've been talking about this game. Oregon favored by 6 points. And Oregon gets a spread this year 4-2. UCLA also 4-2. Interesting fact about Oregon football. The favorite has covered the spread in 11 of Oregon's last 12 games. Very interesting. I don't know how much it plays into this game. I don't think it plays into it much. 6 points, Maddie. What are you taking?
Give me I would take the UCLA money line right now. We're riding with the Bruins. Maybe that's scary after riding with the Huskies earlier, but I think UCLA is the better team right now. I think they're being, more stability in the coaching staff, more stability on the players. I really like how that defensive line plays. That gives them just enough juice to match what Chip Kelly and that offense get going. So yeah, give me UCLA in the 6.5 for sure.
This is a Tux lock game, but it's not a Tux lock in the spread. I'm taking UCLA plus a 6. It's a Tux lock at UCLA money line, is what we got here at plus 195. I believe it was when I made Tux locks. Let me go back and refresh the old DraftKings to see what it is currently as we're recording. It's plus 195 still. Okay, so plus 195, that UCLA money line. Go ahead and hammer that. I think that you can take that one to the bank. That's a second Tux lock. I'll go ahead and give you my other college football lock. It's Purdue plus 2.5. Easy money against Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely. Like, what are we doing here?
Free money.
Yeah. Last primetime game that we got here, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 Central. 24 Mississippi State travels to Tuscaloosa to number 6 Alabama to take on the Crimson Tide following their loss to Tennessee. That game is on ESPN. Maddie, what are your thoughts on this one?
I'm going to be quick on this one, so I don't know how much you'll have. This was me trying to pigeonhole Mississippi State into this game this week because I wanted to talk about them last week with Kentucky. This is probably a better matchup. Bama needs to win this game, so I think you're going to get a lot of Bryce Young and get some good Nick Saban. Hopefully, they have to air the ball out a little bit because the players I want to watch, Emmanuel Forbes, a cornerback from Mississippi State, has 5 interceptions on the year already, and he had 3 last year and 5 the year before. This dude quite literally just takes the ball away from opposing offenses, and he's been absolutely phenomenal for Mississippi State. So I'm excited to see him, match up against Bama. Mostly has some underclass wide receivers, not a lot of guys coming out. Jermaine Burton, if he's allowed to play after smacking that poor Tennessee fan in the head while they were rushing the field, if he's allowed to play, he's finally looks like he's catching on a little bit for Bama. So that's a fun matchup to watch. But I really just wanted to talk about Emmanuel Forbes and the fact this guy has 13 interceptions over 3 years with like half a season still left to play. He's been phenomenal for them. Bama needs to get back on track. It's been looking like Saban's a week away from having a traditional "we're Alabama, I'm Nick Saban" game, and it just hasn't happened. Is this it? I mean, Mike Leach's Mississippi State has been terrible versus Bama, so maybe we shouldn't read too much into this game. But yeah, I just think that matchup in particular is going to be fun for this one.
Alabama's 9-1 in their last 10 after following a loss. So that's a tough. I don't believe I can't remember the stat. I think it's Alabama hasn't lost by. They haven't won by less than 35 points following a loss. So every time that they've lost, they've ended up whooping the team after, which it fares well for the Alabama minus 21 line. But before we get there, Maddie, who are you watching for?
Yeah, we talked about. We can go straight to the line, buddy. We talked about Forbes versus Jermaine Burton. That was
Okay.
my whole reason for this bad boy. So we are good going this. But I'm going to drop some knowledge on you.
Go ahead.
My numbers could be slightly off here, but I'm pretty sure in every Mike Leach game versus Nick Saban's Alabama, Mississippi State has scored a total of 13 points.
Wow, that is a good one. That is a good little nugget there.
They have not done well versus Alabama right now. Mike Leach's offense is not working well versus Alabama. So, that's just something to keep in the back of the mind when you start going through the rest of this.
Another fun fact.
16 points. Sorry, it's 16 points. It is 7, 0, and 9. Their point totals in these games.
That's not good. Another fun fact that might actually influence your pick a little bit as well. Alabama's covered the spread in 11 of its last 12 in October games against AP-ranked teams. Each of Mississippi State's last 6 October games against AP top 10 ranked teams have gone under the total points line. The under 61 is what this points total is set at. And they must be accounting for Alabama to score a lot of points because they have the line set at minus 21, which I am going to take. Alabama minus 21.
And okay, I lied. It's just 0 and 9. He wasn't there in 2019, so I was off by a year, but he's still 0 points, 9 points with that offense last year, probably being better with their offensive line talent, only scoring 9. Give me Bama minus 21. Nick Saban just kind of bullies Mike Leach's teams right now, and I don't think Mississippi State is that talented on offense to make them pay. So easy Bama choice.
All right, let's get into the wild card games. I'll go with mine first. Number 20,
Texas. Primary color matchup off.
This is the primary. This is the last primary color matchup off that we have. Number 20, Texas travels to Stillwater to Oklahoma State at 2:30 Central, 3:30 Eastern. This game's on ABC. Texas favored by 6.5 points. Who's the players you're looking at, Maddie, in this one?
So I think Texas, a lot of underclassmen. Oklahoma State, a lot of underclassmen. Maybe not some straight up great matchups. You can watch Bijan Robinson if you want, but I think in terms of seeing how this game is going to go, I'm going to go to the Texas defensive line with Ovi Gofu, who is a defensive end transfer from Notre Dame. He was there last year. He's there now. He's a long pass rusher, kind of off the edge of that 3-man front. So he doesn't always get to just pin his ears back and rush, but when he does, it looks pretty good. So that means across from him, we're going to be looking at another transfer, Caleb Etienne. He's playing left tackle for Oklahoma State. I think Oklahoma State will have to put up points. That means Spencer Sanders, while being a little dinged up, is going to have to drop back and throw the ball a little bit. So, these pass rushers versus Oklahoma State offensive line might be a little bit of a key. And I think that a Gofu versus Etienne might be the biggest matchup of the bunch.
Spencer Sanders, I believe, is a game time decision for this game. So could be interesting when it comes to the line of Texas favored by 6.5 points. I've waffled on this one because I do think Texas is good. I do think that they have been playing better than Oklahoma State, but 6.5, as I mentioned previously at the beginning of the podcast, these games are going to be close, and I don't think that 6.5 is tough for me to take Texas by. I'm going to take Oklahoma State and the 6.5. Get this, Maddie. Oklahoma State has covered the spread in each of its last 6 October games versus AP ranked teams. So I'm going to go ahead and take the Cowboys, deciding another week with Oklahoma State. Last week I had the Oklahoma State as Tuck's lock at 3.5. They lost by a field goal that cashed. So riding with the Cowboys once again with the plus 6.5. Now, Maddie, what is your wild card game here?
Oh, so this is another team that I guess should have been in my contention for my adopted team of the year, because I feel like I talk and watch a lot of Ole Miss football because I love Lane Kiffin. But we're going to Ole Miss, going to LSU, going to Baton Rouge at a 3:30 game, I believe. No, this is a night. Oh, this is a night game down there.
Yep.
Woo, night game at LSU. Things are going to be flying. I don't trust any opposing head coach as much as I trust Lane Kiffin to come in with a grade A game script for a primetime game at LSU. But LSU is a different animal in these kind of games. Like, this is a big one. Working our way through this, Jaden Daniels for LSU has been throwing the ball a little bit better lately. He's finally becoming a little bit of a quarterback with Brian Kelly in that offense. So their offense is getting it going a little bit, which is nice because that's what you need to see from them, because I don't think their defense is good enough to win them a lot of games. Flip side, Ole Miss was this running offense with the defense first team the first few games. The defense is starting to slip a little bit now. The run game, the offense is still excellent. Lane Kiffin, for my money, is the best play caller in all of college football. Just the way he adapts as the game goes on, and the stuff he's doing with this run game right now are exceptional. But players to watch, other side of the ball, we're going with the safety pairing of Rasheem Young and Otis Reese for Ole Miss. Otis Reese will play a lot in the slot, overhang, nickel, Isaiah Simmons type role. Rasheem Young plays a little bit more as a traditional safety. He's actually a transfer from Iowa State. He was a BJ Kissel favorite last year. He was an underclassman, but I actually got the rare text from BJ saying, "Who's this guy for Iowa State? He's really good." It might have been the K-State game last year, but he had texted me out of the blue, and that does not happen often about college football players from BJ. So he was a guy that he was fun to watch. So there's two safeties, and Kayshon Boutte, wide receiver from LSU, finally got it going last week. Finally had a good game. Is this the moment where it turns around for him? Because he needs a strong finish to the year. So him versus Reese, him working over the top. What did Reese and Young do to slow him down? Do you have any takes about this game at all, Tuck?
It's an interesting game, and when I look at the line specifically of LSU minus 1.5, I think, what do the odds makers know that we don't, right? You're looking at an unranked team, an unranked LSU team. Yeah, I get it's a tough place to play against the number 7 team in the country getting favored. That's something that when I see a line like this, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I think, okay, what do they know that we don't know? And I can't figure it out.
Right. And I stay attached to both these teams. I follow both these teams relatively closely because I like LSU's historic history of the program. I really like Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. I'm on top of these two teams, and I can't figure it out either. Jonathan Mingo, I believe, was dinged up going into last week, or maybe he even missed the game, the wide receiver for Ole Miss. But he didn't record any stats versus Auburn. I think he barely played or got dinged up in it. But I think he's back now. I think he missed last week versus Kentucky, but I think he's supposed to be back. So I don't know. And then you have this run game for Ole Miss versus a shaky LSU defense. Listen, I'm riding with my guy Lane Kiffin here. I think he's the best play caller right now. I think that really shows up as games go on. Third, fourth quarter, Lane Kiffin so far down into a bag, calling plays to beat your defense. He's adjusting so good on the fly to what you're doing. I don't think LSU can score enough points to escape that Lane Kiffin search. If this LSU team could get up by 20 points, 14, 17, 20 points in the first half, maybe I would take that environment. But even a great LSU half probably gets them up, 3 points, 7 points, maybe 10 at most. I trust Lane Kiffin in the way that this best running back room in college football is playing. Give me Ole Miss. Plus, if I get a random extra 1.5 in case there's some kind of 2-point, trickery coming in at the end of the game, I like that as a little bit of cushion here.
Here's an interesting stat I just looked up as you were talking. The home team has covered the spread in 8 of the last 9 games between Ole Miss and LSU. So maybe the odds maker saw that and said, "Yep, we gotta favor them." In 8 of Ole Miss's last 9 games against teams from Louisiana have gone over the total points line at 65.5. At Tiger Stadium, they're averaging 55 points per game. They're 1-3 in over/under records at Tiger Stadium. Interesting.
Something else funny? You want to know another funny stat that has nothing to do with this game, but it's still fun?
Yeah.
Every single time that Ole Miss beats Auburn in football, Auburn fires their head coach after the year. So it happened in 2015, fired. Happened in 2008, fired. 2003, fired. Ole Miss just beat Auburn last week.
And they're going to
see if the trend, I imagine the trend will continue, but when Ole Miss beats Auburn, it matters. And that's just funny that the last, I think 4 times now, if it happens at the end of this year, it'll be the last 4 times that Ole Miss has beat Auburn, which rarely happens. Auburn has to fire their head coach. It's written in law somewhere.
It's in the contract. It's a clause. It has to be a clause. Ole Miss money line plus 105 right now. Double your money. When you put your money down on the
100% go that route. Yeah, the heck with the 1.5. Let's just go straight up.
The old land sharks there. All right, Maddie, any final thoughts?
I mean, that's it, buddy. We've gone a little while here. You got a lot of purple on purple, a lot of orange on orange happening this week. Enjoy it, but remember, only one team gets to come out and wear purple next week between the Horned Frogs and the Wildcats.
What color does Kansas State go to? Silver?
They just got to go black and silver, right? They just have to. I don't know if you can just put another color in there like that.
They'd be like the Raiders.
Oh,
that'd be tough for Chiefs.
They should just big brother KU and just take blue. Just take blue from them. Just say we're blue now.
Blue and silver instead of blue and red. That'd be kind of cool.
Just go Detroit Lions. Hey, I love those Detroit Lions Gold Rush uniforms. Those like pure gray ones are pretty nice. I know it's not silver gray, a little different, but close enough.
Yeah. I like it too. All right, Maddie, let's get out of here. Appreciate you hopping on and talking some college football on KCSNU Kickoff. Make sure to like and subscribe to the KCSNU channel if you want more college content. We got content from Kansas, Mizzou, K-State, everything you need to know from the area teams here at KCSNU. Next week, Maddie and I will be back. We'll update you on our picks and give you everything you need to know about the next week in college football. So until then, we'll see you later.